what I liked about Tim is he's always done everything first class. He doesn't settle for anything but the best. From his first career as a Navy SEAL, now understand this is the elite in the military. He was a Navy SEAL. Then he joined network marketing. He became a multi-million income earner. Then he becomes a generic trainer, and he becomes the preeminent trainer in the industry. He basically developed a methodology to reach the elite ranks every time. So he obviously has something that he can teach you today to help you achieve your goals. So, Tim, it's great to have you with us today.
Wow, Stefan, I greatly appreciate all those kind remarks. It's kind of funny. You don't know who you meet and what story you'll tell later about that. And I remember that where you snuck back into that meeting room, and I remember that entire journey. And I don't think either one of us ever thought we'd be telling that story the way that it's being told now. But I sure appreciate all the kind things that you've said. And Arlene and Ennis, I greatly appreciate you too. You guys are just such great leaders. All of you are. Everyone on the call, I consider it quite a compliment that you would be on this call this morning. I'm really just going to, and I have to apologize for my voice. I've been a traveling warrior over the last little bit, and woke up with my throat a little bit sore this morning. And so, if you can get through that part of this, I have a real good message to give you. And so, again, I apologize for it. What I'm going to do, I've got some stuff sketched across my whiteboard, and it's just basically, it's me sharing with you what I do. All right, it's not as much teaching you as it is just sharing with you what I've been able to do, or how I've been able to do what I've done. And I'm going to say something, and it may sound arrogant, but I promise you it is not intended to do that. I have accomplished everything that I've ever set a goal out to do. And what I mean by that is that whatever my formula is, it seems to work. Now, I have some goals that I'm working on now that I've obviously yet to accomplish. And one thing I can tell you about the goals that I've achieved is that not all of them came when I wanted them. In other words, I may set a target out there as to when I wanted to achieve them, and I didn't reach the target. I reached the target, but not in the time frame that I gave it. And so, in that, I'll tell you that part of my, and probably the majority, 90% of my success has to do with is that I am far more tenacious than I am good. And so what I do is that I don't quit easily. And I would have to say that would probably be about 90% of why I've achieved my goals. But that other 10% has to do with what I'm going to share with you today. And I am also going to talk to you a little bit about discipline. I'll come up with that in the end. I'll talk to you about discipline. I'll talk to you about my view of what motivation is. And then what I'm going to go into now is a little bit on the details of how I go about starting the process of achieving a goal. Because herein lies where I felt as though that I have a little, quite of an advantage. There's only one goal that I've ever achieved that I did not use this formula I'm going to share with you, and it was as a wrestler. But I did this same formula, I just didn't put it on paper first. And so that ought to give a little bit of validation to what I'm going to share with you. Now, I'd like to make something real simple for everybody, and that is that if you'll go back to a goal that you have achieved, and you'll look at all of those pieces of what went into creating it. So if you were to throw your left foot on a pedal on a bicycle, throw your right leg around the seat, have your right foot push off, get your balance, and then put your right foot on the pedal, and then start pedaling, because everybody who rides a bicycle knows it's in that first 10 to 20 feet that's the make or break point of riding a bicycle. Those would be all the steps that make up riding a bicycle, and it seemed insurmountable, unachievable at some point because of the number of times that you didn't do that sequence right. And so the only difference between a goal that you have achieved versus a goal that you want to achieve is that you haven't worked out the pieces yet. And you haven't gotten them in the right sequence. And that's all that it is. And I can tell you that every goal that you've ever achieved, you don't even give it the validation that it deserves. And I know this because if you gave it good validation on every single thing you've ever achieved, you would have the confidence to go after things that you've yet to achieve. And that's all that it is. And so what I'm going to talk to you about is really the structure of how you put the pieces together. Now, I can tell you that I've attended probably maybe 5 of these big goal workshops. I have probably read 20 books or so on goals and time management. And some people make an entire week of goal setting. And I can honestly, I've never learned anything from those things. In fact, I felt as though that what they did was they actually confused me, because the simplicity is that we achieve our goals every day, and then all of a sudden there's all this focus around it and about it, and you get so confused. You're like, man, I don't even know what I want anymore. And so the simplicity that I'm going to share this with you is the simplicity that you should look at it. You should not mount up this enormous amount of effort and force and all of that, because it is really just a real simple process. All right, so let me break this down for you. So if you followed Stefan's instructions and you got a pen and paper, then I'm going to highly suggest that you write this down, because it'll be very hard to visualize if you don't write it down. And so what I'd like you to do is just basically, you're going to write about maybe 4 or 5 things down. And these 4 or 5 things, they need to be, all right, I'm going to throw out a fancy word for you, left justified. And what that means is that these 4 or 5 things are going to be senior points I'm going to give you, and they need to be far on the left-hand side. And I need you to leave about 5 or 6 spaces in between each one of these points that I'm going to give you. And then when I talk about each one of these, then you can indent and write out what I say about them. But they need to be, you need to have these 4 or 5 things as the main headers, if you will. So what I want you to write out on the very top, on the left-hand side, far left-hand side, is goals. All right, so that's a main subject. And then skip several spaces, maybe like 5 or 6, and then write number 2 on the far left, plans. And then skip some spaces, 4 or 5 of them, and then write projects. And then skip spaces, and then write schedule, on, calendar, and due task. Let me give those to you again. The very top one is goals. Second one down is plans. Third one down is projects, and the fourth one down is schedule, on, calendar, and due task. Now, the reason that I had you write this the way that I just did is because I'm going to be giving you content to put underneath those main headers. But I will tell you that the real way this works is the way that you would see it on a piece of paper is on is number 1 on the far left. It would say goals. And then it would indent underneath that and say plans. And it would indent under plans and say projects. And then it would indent underneath projects and say tasks. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Because the goal of what you want to achieve is your main header. It's the main thing that you're working on. You can have 10 different goals, but you're going to have to choose one of them to create the entire formula for how to achieve that goal. And the way that you do that is that you're going to break it down. In other words, all of the books that I've read, all the courses that I've been to, somewhere within one of the books that I was reading, and it wasn't one of the seminars, it was one of the books that I was reading, something hit me. I had the biggest epiphany that I've ever had around achievement. And that epiphany was one simple concept, and it was that everything about goals and everything about time management has one common thread. And the common thread is that it's a giant thing, and you need to break it down into digestible or doable parts. Now, how many times do you need to break it down? Well, that depends on you. Some people can need to break that thing down into 30-minute pieces. And that's where goals equals time management. In other words, I felt as though that there was something that was like connected or similar between goals and time management, but I couldn't put it together. And then finally I did. And what it is that a goal is a big thing that you want. You have to break it down into something smaller. And how small? Well, you might break it down into a plan, and the plan might have 3 steps to the plan. And then you might need to break it down again. And what I mean by break it down, break it is the plan. Break the plan down into smaller pieces, and those will be projects. And then break the projects down into tasks. And you might have 5 tasks to do. But as soon as you finish the 5 tasks, guess what you got done? The project. So if you can just look at the top level is goal, just below that is a plan, just below that is a project, just below that is tasks. Now, work it backwards, and that's the secret. If you get all your tasks done, then your project got done. If you get all of your tasks of all of your projects, then you just completed your plan. And if you complete your plan, then you accomplished your goal. And if you didn't accomplish your goal, then your plan was wrong. Your goal is never wrong. It's your plan. And so you create another plan. Break that down into projects. Break that down into tasks. Schedule and do it. I really, really, really hope, more than anything else, that you fully understand that part of it. That it's accomplish all the tasks. In other words, I'm working it backwards again. But you can't, you'll get so confused in trying to write out a goal and figure out how to accomplish that goal if you try to work it from the bottom up first. You have to work it from the top down, meaning you set your goal and then you say, okay, all right, I've never achieved this before, and so what would be the plan? How would I go about that? Well, I need to learn something. Step 1 of the plan would be to learn something. All right? So you would start out trying to create it this way, and then once you create the entire thing, then you work it from tasks up. You finish all the tasks in one of the projects, and then you finish all the tasks in another of the projects, and then you finish all the tasks in another of the project, and that would complete a plan. And when you get all the steps of the plan done, then your goal should be achieved. Okay, so that's the big picture of this. So now what I want to do is that I want to basically kind of walk you through each one of these things that I do, how I go about doing them. And so on a goal, what I do is Really quite simple. It normally takes me 4 or 5 minutes to write my goal. And I know that every goal guru out there would have a heart attack that I said that, because they put so much significance on that you should spend, weeks or something. And normally what I do is that I'll go to a favorite place. And a favorite place would just basically mean some place that's outside of my office, because I tend to want to finish and do projects or tasks in my office, and I get distracted easily. Phones and emails coming in and so forth. So I'll normally just, whether it's I'll go to a cabin, I'll go to a mountaintop, I'll go to a restaurant, but for some strange, bizarre reason, I get the most done on an airplane. And it's because no one can reach me. So you just find a sacred place, and it's not just goals. The goal part of this will probably take you less than a minute to write down, because for you to even want to go somewhere, you've got a goal in your mind. And so just jot that thing down. If you've got more than one, jot them all down. And so that's it. Bingo. Tim just gave you his secret formula for writing a goal. Go somewhere where you're not going to be distracted and write the goal down. All right? Now, I give you, I'll try to create some of these things. And by the way, my goals, it might be something like buy a beach home. It might be something like help the kids who are on drugs. Help people with getting clean drinking water. In other words, that's the vastness of my goals. Now, they don't have to be that way. When I talk to you about discipline, and a little bit later, you'll once you develop the systematic process of achieving your goals, then your goals become bigger each time. And you can take on a huge, huge goal, like getting 1 million kids off of drugs, or, something like that. And so, but do make what you write down simple, because it's your life, and it is simple. And it's as simple as you make it, or it's as complex and difficult as you make it. And so I would just recommend that you make something simple. So let's just say that you want to, I'm just going to throw out an idea here, and as an example to walk you through. And so let's say that I wrote down that I want to achieve 180 pounds. Okay, so let's take it into that direction for just now, and then I'll do a financial one. So I might just say something very, very simple like I want to lose 25 pounds, or I might do it the other way and say I want to weigh 180 pounds. Okay, so either way is fine. It's going to accomplish the same thing. And then so once I write that down that I want to do that, now what's the steps now? I got to break that down. And so let's just say it this way. My goal is to lose 20 pounds, let's say. And step one is to write that plan, right? And so normally my first step of a plan is I got to learn something. And so I would recommend that normally the reason that you haven't accomplished something is it's because something that you're battling with mentally on how to do it. And so I would recommend that you look around in one of your first steps of your plan. Okay, so how? How do I do it? Where do I learn this? So step one of a plan is, what do I need to learn? And then step two of my plan would be maybe decide and buy the best Slenderiiz program for me. Step three of my plan to weigh 180 pounds would be to read all the literature and listen to all conference calls on Slenderiiz. I'm just kind of making this up as I go, but I'm giving you how I think. Step 4 would be to go through all of my house and dump all the junk out of my house. Because obviously, there's a correction point that needs to happen here. And then step 5 would be to buy 1 week's worth of only the foods that I'm going to eat that'll achieve my goal. And then, you know what, I just thought of number 6, step 6, which is to figure out a way to make sure that I drink at least 3 liters of water a day. Because that wouldn't be common, and so I'm going to have to figure out how to actually make that a part of my life. All right, so now, if you jotted down what I just gave you there, then what you would be looking at is, in order to achieve 20 pounds weight loss, then step 1 is I wrote this all as a plan, remember? I didn't break this into projects yet, and I didn't break it into any tasks yet, and I didn't put it on any calendars yet. This is just breaking it down into a plan. I'm doing something for you to show you, to kind of point something out. But I want you to just recognize this is all part of plan. So step 1 would be to figure out the best program, the Slenderiiz program, or what I need to learn. And then step 2 is to decide the best Slenderiiz program for me. And then step 3 was to read all the literature and listen to all the conference calls. Step 4 would be to dump all the stuff out of my house that's going to tempt me into eating something I shouldn't. Step 5 is going to be to buy a week's worth of food that's on the program. And then step number 6 is to make sure that I drink 3 liters of water a day. All right, and so for those of you who have been over at my house, you've seen how I make sure that I get 3 liters because I put numbers on top of the lids so that I know that I drink my at least 3. So now, do I need to break that down into projects? I could. In other words, I could say, all right, so on this food thing, I need to go to the grocery store and I need to get a week's worth of food. So I would need to break that one down into projects because it's got a lot of steps in it. Would I need to break down all the conference calls? Yeah. You know what? Let me see the schedule here. There's a Marlisa call on this day. There's a Dr. Strand call on this day. There's, in other words, you might need to break that down and put that on a calendar as to when those events are occurring in order to do it. Right? Now's the point that I wanted to make. Don't ever get lost in the structure of this thing because there's just this real logical point that if you don't need to break it down, don't break it down. But if it's not getting done, almost guaranteed every single time is that you're looking at something too big to digest. And it creates this bounce off. In other words, you want to go after it, but you bounce off of it. Why have you never moved forward on it? And I can almost guarantee for me, every single time I haven't moved forward on it, is there some little point that I'm not making a decision on or I haven't broken it down a little bit smaller so that I could do it. And that's the whole reason that I had that big epiphany that time management has to do with breaking the day into hour chunks. And that goals has to do with breaking them down into smaller pieces, a plan. And if it's still too big, I break down all of the plans into projects. And if it's still too big, I break it all down into tasks. And so if you write something down and you write it in enough detail when you're writing it, you might not have to break it down any more than that. But the way that you can always tell if you should break it down more is it getting done? If it's not getting done, I can almost guarantee it that you haven't broken it down, or there's something that you don't know how to do. All right. So let me go to number 2. All right. So what I mean by number 2 is that I want you to, I'm going to give you another one, but this one I'm going to actually break down into projects and tasks. And I'm just going to give you an example here. I'm not training you how to make the money necessarily, although this plan will work. Is I'm going to write a new goal. So just basically everything that I just showed you was for the purpose of showing you that sometimes you can have a goal. Let's say you're going to get a haircut. You got a goal to get your hair cut. Now, do you really need to break that thing down into projects and tasks and calendar? No, probably not. All right, so in other words, if you write a simple goal, you don't have to break it all the way down into plans, projects, and tasks. But when you've got a big goal, you may need to break that thing down into steps. And the reason that I have found so many people don't achieve their goal is because they don't break it down into smaller pieces. And they just have this one big goal. I want to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to eat better. And that did not do it because it's too broad. You need to break that down. What does that mean? That means I need to get all the junk out of my kitchen and the freezer. It's got that ice cream in there. Get that out of there. That is against your goal. If you can picture your goal and all of the calendar and all of the tasks and all of the projects and all of the plans are an arrow that's pointing in a particular direction. All of those arrows are pointing in that direction. But if you have something in your kitchen that points you in the opposite direction, it is counter against your goals. And so why in the world would it be in your kitchen? All right, so you have to do all the steps necessary to make it happen. And so there is no such thing as just eat better. That's not anything that's going to accomplish something for you. So you have to break it down into how you're actually going to get it done. Look at that plan, look at that project, look at that all the tasks, and make sure that will get it done. All right. So that was my whole purpose in educating you on that part, was to let you know that sometimes you don't need to break it down anymore. But I'm going to give you an example where you absolutely would need to break it down. So let's say that my next goal is I want to make $10,000 a month. All right, so what is my plan? My plan would be to bring 2 people into the business and help each to create about 14,000 volume points. Now, if you're somewhat of a guest on the call and you're just investigating the company, that's going to be the equivalent of about $18,000 of volume. Any sales manager, any business in the world is going to have to move some kind of volume. All right, because we build businesses in other countries, and they have currencies that are different than ours. Then we have to put it onto a point system instead of calling it dollars all the time. And so that's the reason that I say 14,000 volume points. All right, but my goal is to make $10,000 a month. My plan is to bring 2 people into the business and help each to create about 14,000 volume points. All right, does everybody get the plan? That's my plan. It doesn't have 10 steps in it. It doesn't have 7 steps in it like the one where I was just talking about losing 20 pounds. Why? Because I've got to break this down into small, small pieces. And the plan of getting 2 people in the business, I've got to break that down into projects, I've got to break that down into tasks, and I've got to put it on a calendar. All right, so my plan, my goal again, at the top level is $10,000 a month. Indented one section is my plan. My plan is to bring in 2 people into the business and then create $14,000 of volume points under each one of them. Now I'm going to break that plan into projects. Project number 1, I got to join RX. If you're not haven't already joined RX, you're going to need to make sure you do that. And so I would decide which starter kit, and then I'd buy that starter kit. And if you want my recommendation, I would get the Slenderiiz Elite Pack. All right, so the project to join RX has got 2 tasks in it. Decide which starter kit and buy it. And so then I would decide that it's the Slenderiiz Elite and buy it. Put that on the calendar when you're going to do that and do it. All right, that project's now complete. Project number 2 is to get trained. How would you get trained? Break that into tasks. I need to study the boss training. So if you're new, as soon as you join, there's a training that I put in, and it's several hours of videos where I train a person, like what is network marketing and what is not, and how to do it in first-class kind of a way, how to talk to people when you call a prospect, what do you say, how do you respect them, and things like that. And then there's also steps that you do. There's a section in lead generation that you actually do. So under the project called Get Trained, task 1 is do and study the boss training. Task number 2 is to ask your upline, and so that I don't throw any jargon around there, your upline is kind of like, would be the equivalent of a boss. Okay, so you have a boss, you have someone who's kind of walking you through these steps. And so ask the person who brought you into the business to test your knowledge. And don't be afraid of this. If you're afraid of it, it means you're uncertain about what you know or don't know. And so ask them to test your knowledge on it. And then task number 3 would be get the conference call and the event schedule for everything having to do with Slenderiiz and study it. Right? So you got to know your business, right? You got to study and you got to know it, so that when people ask you questions, then you can, you know what you're talking about, and only then can you add value to people's lives, is if you know what you're talking about. So you'd want to make sure that you get everything that has to do with Slenderiiz, and go to them if it's an event. Get on the calls if it's a conference call or a webinar. All right, so that would accomplish Get Trained. Right, so project number 1 is to join RX, and you got all the tasks done, so therefore that project is accomplished. Project number 2 is to get trained. And you need to study the boss, you need to ask your upline to test your knowledge, and then you need to get all the conference call scheduled as well as the event schedules. And when you've done all of that, then you've gotten trained. Project number 2 is checked off. Project number 3 is, let's just say, I'm just going to throw this out there, is to create your Slenderiiz story. Now, what's your Slenderiiz story? Task number 1, weigh yourself. Ugh, yuck. Right? This is the confront. Task number 2 is to take a picture of that fabulous body that you're wanting to change. Ugh. Task number 3 is to get someone to video record you. What you're going through mentally, how you're looking forward to changing your body and things like that. You don't have to use that later, but take it from me, you get going, all of a sudden you lose all this weight, and people say, well, you've always been lean. And you're like, geez, why didn't I take a picture back then? So make sure that you do that. And then you're going to basically set up your house to make sure that there's no temptations in your house, get all the junk out of your house. Wherever you normally would go to get junk, stop it. In other words, make sure that you interfere with how you always cheat on it. Don't go to any more movies for the next 30 to 60 days if you cannot resist the temptation of popcorn. All right, so if you got all those tasks done, then you would complete the project called Create My Slenderiiz Story. And by the way, there's some other things in there, right? You would have to go to the store and buy all the foods. You'd have to put it on a calendar and figure out exactly when you're going to eat what. You would have to take the Slenderiiz, let it sit under your tongue for 10 seconds, wait 10 minutes before you eat anything else. In other words, all of those is what I mean when I say task and put it on a calendar. You would want to get it down to where it's in your calendar and you see it. It's visual. All right, I know I've got to, at this time, do this. And I've got to, at this time, eat 1 ounce of nuts or whatever it is that you're going to, the program that you're following. So when you got all of that, create your Slenderiiz story done, then you've completed project number 3. And project number 4, get 2 friends who want to lose weight to come in with you. All right, so surely you can find 2 people who also want to lose weight. And so when you do that, then you're going to have to break that down to finding those 2 friends. Now, you might have them right in your head, right? So, but you've got to kind of incorporate some of the things that you learned earlier. So if you went through the boss training, then you would know a little about how to actually call that person. So you'd sketch out a little script, run it by the person who brought you into business, say, hey, how does this sound? Then, task number 2 might be get a conference call schedule and the event schedule. In other words, you want to invite your friend to either have your upline help you with a call or to watch a video or to come onto a conference call or to go to a Slenderiiz Now event, which is kind of like it's like a presentation where people get together in a home or something like that. And so any of those things that you actually invite the person to, but you would need to know where these things are going on before you make the call. Otherwise, you call them and they say, yeah, I'm interested, and you go, okay, well, let me find out the schedule, and I'll get back to you, right? So that would be the wrong sequence. So you'd need to know the schedule so that when they said, yeah, I'd be interested to hear about that, then you say, great, go to this website or be on this call at a certain time. So when you've gotten and you've made your calls and you've gotten 2 friends who want to come in as well, then you've accomplished project number 4. You've got 2 people in the business. Do you see now how this all lays out? That if you were to just say, I need to get 2 people in the business, but you haven't broken it down into projects and tasks, how insurmountable that looks like. It's like, how do I get 2 people? Let's see. And that's how you end up not accomplishing your goal. It was too big of a project. You didn't break it into tasks that were doable, and so you bounce off of it. So what I'm trying to tell you is that when I was a wrestler in high school, the whole subject of wrestling was too big. And I walked in to do weigh-ins where you step on a scale and the coach is standing there. And it was just he and I said, I want to know how to be really good at this. And he said, if you want to be really good at it, choose one move and master it. Know it better than anybody else in all the high schools in this area. And so I chose something called the double leg takedown. It just basically means you're going to grab both legs of a guy and pick him up. And so I rehearsed that thing over and over and over and over again. So what was I really doing? I had taken the complexity of all the moves that somebody can ever do on you on a wrestling mat, and the coach had just broken it down into one task that I needed to master. And so I just rehearsed that one move over and over and over and over and over again until where I got to the point to where it didn't matter if my opponent knew that I was going to do a double leg takedown. I had done it so well, I had done it so many times that he couldn't stop it. And so even though that I didn't at the time know that I had just created the formula that would forever allow me to succeed at everything I ever did, I didn't know that it was a formula. I just broke something down into a smaller piece. Is all that I knew that I did. But then later, I would be able to see the whole thing in a big picture, is that it doesn't matter how big the elephant is, you're going to have to break it down. Okay, in elephant meaning your goal. It doesn't matter how big that goal is. You just need to break it down into smaller pieces. All right, and so really, really keep a close watch out for any time you feel as though you can't do it. The feeling of I can't do it is saying to you, hey, break it down. Make it smaller. If you're a coach, and you're all going to be coaches, because as soon as you figure out how to lose weight, you're going to be a coach to help other people. As soon as you figure out how to make $10,000 a month, you're going to be a coach for other people. And what you've always got to be listening for, and that ear has to be as sharp as a deer's ear, and that is you be listening for people bouncing off, feeling like they can't do it. Because this is the point that you step in and you break it down into tasks for them. Let me say a word on motivation. Motivation is worthless. And let me correct myself. Motivation is worthless until after you're trained. If I have somebody who throws me in the water and I can't swim, and he's standing on the pier yelling, "You can do it! You can do it! Just do it! Or just do it! Get inspired!" You would have to actually look at the humility or the humor in this whole subject of motivation. Motivation only matters once you're trained. Once you're trained, there's some like you can be motivated. You can get a little bit more motivation. You can be inspired by seeing someone else. But just motivation without training is worthless. Is what I'm trying to say to you. I had there's a phrase, and it's what the mind can conceive, the body will achieve and beyond. It's a phrase that's forever etched into my mind. And the reason why is because it was on the back of every single person's shirt who was going through Navy dive school. And when I did not think that I could make another step, when I had run until I couldn't run anymore, when I had swam until I couldn't swim anymore, this phrase was on the back of somebody's shirt that I was running right behind. And so it would inspire me to take one more step. And so, but if I didn't know how to make a step, motivation is worthless. So you have to know how to make the step. And so people who try to motivate before they train, they're going to run into failure on it. So motivation does matter, only after training. Let me talk to you about discipline real quick here. There's different kinds of discipline. And I'm not talking about spare the rod and spoil the child kind of discipline, right? Just so that you know. I'm talking about the ability or willingness to do what you say you're going to do. I'm talking about that kind of discipline. I'm talking about the discipline to wake up in the morning and execute what your goal is. And what would that be? All your tasks. And so that is a discipline that I have found that is very necessary if you want to have a good body, if you want to make a lot of money in this industry. You have to have the discipline of repeating your decision. And that's the way that I've broken discipline down, repeating your decision. If I make a decision today to be on a specific diet, the Slenderiiz diet, then I have to make that same decision tomorrow. And I have to make the same decision the day after tomorrow. And so that is repeating decision type of discipline. I'm not talking about a discipline of if I'm stuck out in the wild in the desert somewhere and I have to endure without food, or I have to endure. So there is the discipline of endurance. If I'm a prisoner of war, I would have to endure the pain. That's not the discipline that I'm talking about here. You don't have to have that discipline to succeed in RX. You don't have to have that kind of discipline to succeed on the diet program. Okay, so the kind of discipline I'm talking about is just the pure decision to do something and repeating the decision for 30 days, for 60 days, for 90 days. And I'm telling you, it's the simplest thing in the world. And when you, in essence, get over that it's hard, it's not hard at all. The only reason that it's hard to you is compared to other stuff in your life, it's been kind of plush, right? Your life has been kind of plush, that you've not had to endure any pain of something where you're stuck out in the wild for 3 months and you've got to live off of ants or something. So life has been plush for you. You're now going to have to do something that gets you what you want, but you're going to have to make some decisions and stick to them. Now, let me tell you how you get this discipline that I'm talking about. You're not born with it. You don't have it because you're in the military. People say you're disciplined because you're in the military, and I laugh. You should have seen me the day I went into the military. I had accomplished my goals in wrestling before then. I was making more money than my dad before I went into the military by mowing yards. So what am I talking about with how do you develop discipline? You develop it as opposed to being born with it. Nobody's born with discipline. You develop this thing. And you develop it by creating small things that you do. You're already disciplined on brushing your teeth, when you wake up and before you go to bed. Right? You've decided to do that, and you've repetitively done that for many, many, many years. All I'm talking about doing is recognizing that is discipline. And so you add something to that tomorrow. Right? So when you wake up tomorrow, you're going to do something else. You're going to wake up and let's just say that you go, I'm going to drink a liter of water before 9 a.m. And do it. And when you do it, you feel a little bit better. Because part 2, the second kind of discipline that you have to succeed in a hard body or to succeed in network marketing is you have to have pride in yourself discipline. And what is that? That means that you do not look outside of yourself to get validated. In other words, if you need praise from outside sources, then it's very, very hard because everybody else is okay at 20, 30% body fat. And so you'll never get their praise in the beginning. You're going to get their lack of discipline, and it becomes funny. It's like, I'll get on the diet on Monday. I'll get on the diet at the first of the year. I'll get on it. In other words, you're going to have to live that kind of life. But if you have the discipline to say, I listen to myself, I have the discipline of what I want, and it's based on ethical principles. To thyself, to thy own self be true. And that means that you only listen internally as to whether that's right or wrong. And you do not need to be validated externally. And so you just execute what you want to do, and you don't really care what other people have their opinion of you, because you're driven by your own principles. And so the discipline to repeat what you know is a successful action, and the discipline to only pray, to be okay with only praise internally. But once, for some reason, once you do this enough times, every time you do a little small thing that's towards your goals, and you do what you say you're going to do, then your self-esteem goes up just a notch. Your confidence that you'll be able to do it tomorrow goes up just a notch. And then tomorrow you execute that, and then the next day you execute that, and pretty soon you're on day 30. You've dropped 15 to 20 pounds. Or you've gotten 10 people into the business. And then all of a sudden, almost as though that you're propelled by your own momentum. Do not reward yourself with ice cream. Do not reward yourself with a week off. No. Not until your goal is achieved. When you get to $10,000 a month, then reward yourself. When you've lost the 20 pounds, then reward yourself. Do not reward yourself with doing something that's completely contrary, counter to it. That's all that I know. That's all that I know on this subject. You decide what you want. You break it into a goal, break that goal into a plan, break the plan into a project, or projects, break the projects into tasks, put it on a calendar, and do it. And then decide on another thing that you want, and get that. And then decide on something else you want, and get that too. And you just keep repeating that cycle over and over and over. And then after that, when you keep on doing the cycle of goal, plan, project, task, when you come back around, you're a little bit bigger of a being. And why are you bigger as a being? Because you've got the confidence. And that's all a giant being is the confidence. And then you stretch that goal a little bit bigger this time. And pretty soon you'll find yourself reaching out, instead of just losing weight or just making $10,000 a month, you're reaching out and you're grabbing the whole world, and you're wanting to help the whole world. Why? Because you've disciplined yourself out of just focusing on yourself. You've gotten to become a much bigger person. And now you want to help the whole world. And so that's how I stumbled into what I do now, is that I just got a little bit bigger every single time I accomplished a little small goal. And I'm telling you, they start with those little tiny discipline points of drinking a liter of water before 9 a.m., with putting on my tennis shoes as soon as I roll out of bed, in my gym shorts and tennis shoes, so that I know I'm going to work out. It's not I'm going to leave it for later. It's those little things. And so that's my wish for you, is that you do accomplish your goals for this year. I appreciate the compliment that you've given me by being on this call. Stefan, Arlene, and Ennis, I greatly, greatly appreciate you and your leadership, and I appreciate you inviting me onto this call. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Stefan or Arlene or whoever's going to take it over from here. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Tim. I could let you speak for another 3 hours. A lot of great content. So I hope you guys realize what we have here. When I learned that Tim was back in the game, building a brand new team, you now understand why I want to jump in and build. Just to watch him build from scratch, someone who's done it before, and see how he's putting the pieces together and make this thing happen, that's the reason I wanted to be here. All right, that's one of the big reasons. And so before we let you go, Tim, what do you think that people on the line right now should do? What would be the steps? Like, we just talked about creating a game plan, setting a goal. What would be the steps they should be doing right now?
Well, obviously I can only speak for RX, right? So if somebody wants to do something outside of that, I've given you the formula, and so you would just basically break it down the same kind of a way. Right now, what I would recommend everyone do is launch into Slenderiiz. The difference between Slenderiiz and Slenderiiz: Slenderiiz is a product. Slenderiiz is the entire system that we're putting together around Slenderiiz. And so I would launch, if I were you, recognize the real opportunity that exists there. And so I would break that down. I'd break down Slenderiiz into, just as the way that I broke it down there, is create a story for yourself. Create your story. It'll be worth a lot of money to you to create your story. If you don't, in other words, if you're already lean and you're not going to create your own story, then you will basically use all the testimonials that of people who've already gone before you, and as they come out. So in terms of, that would be number one. So if you're not in yet, join. Get the Slenderiiz Elite. Then after that is create your story, or go through all the boss, get trained on those things. Those are the fundamentals. Those are the skill sets that you're going to have to succeed in a broad view, right? They're not the very small particles. They're not the details. They're the broad view. But you have to have the basis of that. And then after that, then you would create your story, your Slenderiiz story. If you don't have it, put together all the story pieces that you think your audience, and then what I mean by audience is that all of your prospects could possibly have. And so if you know a good beastie, large person, then you would want to find a testimonial that would be that big, large person who lost weight, had success on it, so that you could basically show them that story or something like that. So create your story or use somebody else's story. And then focus on getting your first two, and then get two more. And by doing that simple thing, is, if you did build two legs, by the way, if you did build two people to 15,000, roughly, 14,000 points, then you would make $10,000 a month or thereabouts. It would be about $100,000 a year, but you would make that amount of money. So once you do that, and you've just figured out how to get two, then you've done the successful action. Right? That is the riding of the bicycle. From here on, it is just the repetitiveness of doing it over and over and over again. And so, one of the tasks that, once you've done it, then one of the tasks that you would make sure that is on your calendar every day until you've reached your big financial goals is just to make sure that you have on a task that generate 10 leads a day. It could be people you know. It could be web marketing. It could be ads you run in the newspaper. It could be door hangers that you send out. It could be anything at all. But there's not a business in the world that survives that does not advertise itself. And so you're going to have to figure out how to generate 10 leads a day. And out of that, you'll probably do about 2-3 presentations a day. And out of that, half of those people will be interested, and you'll kind of court them through, and some of them will fall off, and some of them will join. And that's no different than any business in the world. Not any business in the world. They're all like that. Apple Computers the same way. Right? They just advertise on such a broad scale that you do not recognize that they broadcast to a whole bunch of people so that they generate enough leads in a day, to generate enough sales in a day, to keep them in business. That's all that happens there. And so you wouldn't be any different. So in this one, it's just simple. Figure out how to generate about 10 leads a day. And just follow through. That would be the steps that I would recommend. And what I mean by follow through is this is the discipline of repeat. Have the discipline of repeat. And if there is anybody that I know that has the discipline of repeat, it would be Stefan Page and Arlene. Those two are just unbelievable at, I kind of snicker sometimes because Arlene is she's such an ankle biter. She bites on, man, and that woman just, she repeats, and she's so good at it. And that's the reason that they're successful. I remember Stefan all the way through. He heard me do this thing, the inviting formula, and he heard me do live calls, and then he had to do it too. And he would send me his live calls and says, "Can you listen to this?" And he sent me hours of live calls, and so I listened to them. Right? In other words, that's repeating. He's continually doing it. But there's one little step that's extra. It's called correcting yourself, not just repeating unsuccessful actions, but repeat, evaluate, correct, repeat, evaluate, correct, repeat. And so that's the reason that he's so good on the telephone now. And it's the reason that I'm so good on the telephone now. I wasn't to begin with. I don't know how anyone survived my assault. I was not good. And so that's what I would recommend, Stefan.
All right. Now, guys, you've got your game plan. It's time to take action. And it's going to be a pleasure to working with you and help you achieve your goals this year and the years in the future. So with this, I'm going to pass on the call to Arlene. If you want to close the call here, I'd love to hear from you, Arlene.
Okay, I would love to do that. I appreciate you, Tim. Thank you for these words of wisdom. Thank you for your call to action, Stefan, and Tim, for the plan. We have no excuse now. We have a few more days left of this year to get ready and get on our way. And with Slenderiiz, I don't see how you can fail. I mean, I've lost 30 pounds, and I feel wonderful. I have my story. It's time for you to get your story written down and go for it. And I'm excited. So thank you, guys. Thank you for all that you've done for us. And I appreciate everybody on the call. So with that, I just want to say Happy New Year. And God bless you, and I'm anxious to talk with you next week, and we'll get started on all of these goals and projects that you're going to get started this week.